Hello and welcome to Will It Roll. We are back to traditional with Forza Motorsport 4 and 3 cars. Now this week I saw this comment and I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. I literally looked it up 5 minutes ago and now I can't remember. We're going to do a muscle car week. In fact, this weekend's been very muscle car heavy, which is good. I like muscle cars. We're going to start with the Ravel. Now the reason I picked the Ravel as one of the 3 cars is because it wasn't quite the most powerful muscle car. I believe, if I've got this right, I could be wrong, the Ford Galaxy was the most powerful, but there weren't very many of them made. They were like 650 horsepower. They were insane things, and they were so scary and dangerous that hardly anybody bought them. So this is the most powerful, sort of successful muscle car, I guess, the Ravel. The El Camino, I believe, has the same engine in it. They're both got 450 horsepower, which is a hell of a lot of power. So speed shouldn't be too much of an issue. However, getting it to roll standard, yeah, that's a big problem. Muscle cars aren't renowned for great suspension, and the suspension is kind of soft and bouncy, which makes rolling these cars really very tricky. As you can see here with these are the early runs I did with the car. It's quite clear that this thing is not going to roll standard. The suspension's sort of so soft that as you go over there, it just compresses the suspension and nothing really happens. There's also a slight issue with these cars sort of handling as well, can be a little bit problematic. So with the Ravel, it was very quickly realised I had to upgrade it. Suspension, all I did was the suspension. I raised the ride height, stiffened the suspension with this car, and that was the first attempt. It wasn't a particularly good attempt, but I'm going to spin it around and go again. I do like the Ravel. It's not my favourite of the muscle cars, but well, I like all muscle cars, but the Ravel is quite a nice car. I have it in hideous gold. You should know me by now. I pick the most ridiculous colours for cars. And here we go for the second attempt. And there we go. Look at that. The Ravel has rolled and spins around on its roof a little bit. And there we go. This car didn't take too long. You are never going to roll this thing standard unless you're incredibly lucky. The suspension on this is just far too soft. Upgraded suspension, maybe with just a raised ride height, you could roll it. You might not need to. Well, I think you probably would need to stiffen actually. Maybe with just stiffened and not raised. I'm not sure. You could probably do it with slightly less tuning than that. But there we go. Up next we have a Ford Mustang. Now this wasn't the fastest nor the most powerful, probably not even the most exciting of the muscle cars, but the Mustangs were the most successful. I think the Mustang and the Camaro are the only ones that survived sort of from when they were made to modern day. The Pontiac Firebird lasted a while, but that died out in the sort of 2000s. I think the Mustang and the Camaro are the only ones who did, although I'm not sure. The Camaro may have died out in the middle somewhere. But of course, sort of around the 80s, the Mustangs were terrible rubbish. This one here is the 1965 Mustang. Has 271 horsepower, not quite as powerful as the Ravel, but it's quite a lot lighter actually. I was amazed. This thing's only 2,500 pounds. I wasn't expecting it to be that lightweight. So we're going to have a go standard, and this is even less likely to roll than the Ravel. It really just isn't interested in rolling standard. I think I drove about 5 minutes and it barely even lifted 2 wheels off the road. The suspension's just too soft on these things, and the cars are also quite low, quite wide, and so yeah, it's not going to roll standard, this thing, unless you are insanely lucky. The brakes are terrible on it as well. I braked at a normal sort of stopping point there and just went straight on. So it was to the upgrade shop and I raised and stiffened the suspension again on this car. This one wasn't a particularly fun one to try and roll, I'm going to be honest. It's quite a stubborn car. It wasn't particularly interested. I mean, it's quite high now, suspension and stiff. Still wasn't really there. That was sort of the first I was going to say inclination, but I probably pronounced terribly. That was the first sort of hint this thing might actually roll. This car took quite a while. I'm going to be honest, we come through here again. You know, it wasn't looking particularly interested in rolling. So yes, I did eventually, of course I was persistent with these cars, as I always am. I did eventually get it to roll with just suspension upgrades, and there we go. It's quite a clean roll actually there, and it's annoying wall. I hate that wall. And there we go, we kind of parked it in the tyre wall. So, there we have it. 2 muscle cars have been rolled. The Mustang was a little bit more of a pain. The Ravel was surprisingly easy. The Ravel kind of spoiled me. I thought this was going to be an easy episode, but no. That Mustang was a bit of a pain. And then the final car we come on to is the Pontiac GTO in lovely pink, because old cars come in interesting colours. And now the Pontiac GTO, the reason why I picked this one is I'm probably going to create arguments here, but the GTO is kind of regarded as the first proper muscle car. There's lots of debate over what's the first muscle car. The GTO is kind of regarded as the first sort of true muscle car, which is why we have this one here. Now, the GTO has 359 horsepower, so that's not bad, I have to say. Weighs 3,400 pounds, so yes, it's quite heavy, like 1,000 pounds heavier than that Mustang. I do quite like the GTO. Again, it's not, I don't say it's my favourite of the muscle cars, but I do quite like the GTO. Maybe not in sort of lavender pink. Well, who bought a Pontiac in that colour? You're buying a muscle car. Why would you buy it in that? But anyway, again, we're trying the Pontiac Standard, and it's much the same story really. The suspension in these cars are so soft and bouncy that they're just not really interesting. I tried a bit with all of the cars. I spent about 5 minutes, I think, with all these cars. Just tried, and they're just not lifted. I think that was the closest any of the cars got standard there, and that's not even vaguely near rolling. So it was to the upgrade shop, and suspension parts went in the GTO. I did initially try it with just stiffened suspension and didn't want to roll, so I had to raise the suspension as well. And that was the first attempt with the car. Looking pretty good actually. So I was feeling fairly confident this one here wouldn't take too long. So this is attempt number 3, I believe, and that was so close, nearly rolled over. Just didn't quite get enough speed, I don't know, and may have clipped the wall a little bit. So at this point I was feeling quite confident this car wasn't going to take too long. And then I spent another 20 minutes driving this thing, and it just wouldn't do anything. It just do that, it will go on 2 wheels. It just would not roll over. I spent forever on this blooming car. I am fairly bored of Pontiacs now. And again, you see through there, that just wasn't particularly interested. This has got to be one of the longest cars it's taken for me to roll. I think it's something to do with its length and sort of like width. This is a huge car. While muscle cars with sort of a big engine and a small body, and while this is smaller than, say, the Lincoln Continental, it's still pretty massive by today's standards. I was getting it fairly close. This is sort of like 20 minutes in. I was getting it fairly close to rolling. I like how I hit a wall at about 30 miles an hour there. Not a scratch on it. Absolutely nothing. Real cars should be like that. But yes, this is quite a long time in. But of course, I was persistent, as I always am with these blooming things. And there we go. The GTO has rolled. It wasn't the most amazing roll in the history of Will It Roll, but there we go. I managed to roll 3 muscle cars. They are blooming tricky. I don't think you want to roll any of these things standard. It's just the suspension is too soft. I did try a couple of other cars. I think I tried a Camaro just to see if any of them would roll standard, but they've all got the same problem. So yes, there we go. That is it for this episode of Will It Roll. It's a bit shorter video today. I didn't realise it was actually quite that short because these cars, I cut out loads of them just driving around a corner because it wasn't particularly interesting. So next week, we're going to have a Jap car week, since we've done American muscle cars pretty much all this weekend. Next week is going to be a Japanese cars. I know absolutely nothing about, well, I know a little bit, but I don't know very much about them. So people, please leave suggestions as to what 3 cars you think I should roll, because, yeah, I would probably end up picking the wrong ones. So please do leave suggestions. We will look through, pick the most top voted, commented ones or most requested ones, and then you will see them rolled next week. However, that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.